from 46 to 65, there was this process of nations becoming liberated, right? I mean, the number of nations in the United Nations doubled from like 55 to more than doubled to like near 120 at that point. What's happening there? Is just this sort of this idea that people are like, you know what? We're trying to wrest the concept of liberty away from it being an exclusively white phenomena.
I mean, to take one small example, Julius Naira, who was the founding president of the nation of Tanzania, wrote no fewer than 8 books, each of which had the word freedom in the title, right? So the idea that this is a freedom struggle, that in many ways this was the freedom struggle, was really central for those anti-colonial activists, say, in Africa and Asia. Look at, for example, Vietnam. The Viet Minh, who were formed during the Second World War, were formed as a resistance group against the Japanese occupation of Vietnam. But they also made it clear from Jump Street that they were not going to fight for freedom from the Japanese to simply accept the reimposition of French rule after the war was over, and they didn't. So the end of the Second World War led immediately to the Franco-French War in Vietnam, in which the French tried to reimpose their empire and failed. Because, why are we going to fight for freedom against the Japanese and then give it up to the French? And you have that same pattern going on throughout the world that really emphasizes, the age of European empire was over. And partly, I think many people in Britain, for example, recognized that Britain had a choice to make. It could either try to regain or retain its empire, or it could develop what became the welfare state, more sort of social programs to benefit the British people. And it ultimately chose the latter, right? The French, on the other hand, were more hard-headed about it. They felt that if they didn't retain their empire, they could no longer be regarded as a great power. In the era of the dominance of the United States and the Soviet Union, the only thing that would make France a great power was having an empire. So they fought to retain their empire 2 horrible losing wars, first in Indochina and then in Algeria. From 1946 to 1962, they fought these losing battles to retain empire, only have to recognize at the end of this period, and this was Charles de Gaulle's great achievement, that France was not going to have a great empire anymore. It was going to have different ways of exercising its influence in the world.
So where are we today in terms of this concept? Like, how much? I guess it's sort of hard to sort of make a quantitative evaluation. But you also, at the end of the book, you juxtapose the idea of Ronald Reagan saying let freedom ring, tear down that wall, and Donald Trump saying let freedom ring, build that wall. But where are we in that? It feels like there's a lot of liberty is a very dynamic term right now.
No, and I think we're at a real crossroads in a lot of ways. I like to say I'm an optimist, frankly, and people often ask me, how can any historian be an optimist after reading about all sorts of deaths and battles and horrible events and so on and so forth? But
let me join them in asking you that.
Well, one thing is being a parent. If you're a parent and you're not an optimist, there's something wrong there, or there's something challenging there, right?
You're hitting on.
Yeah,
there's a challenge. Sure, that's true.
But also because I do think America is changing. For example, let's look at the death of George Floyd. When that happened, my first reaction was, I really don't understand why white people are getting so upset. It's not like this hasn't happened before, right? Many, many times before, right? And yet the fact of the matter, there was a sea change in terms of America's reaction to the idea of this Black man being shot by the police. And the fact that Black Lives Matter became one of the biggest movements in America, in part as a result of that, was something really unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. And I think a very hopeful sign. So, I think it's also, people are becoming more and more aware of the contradictions of American democracy, the fact that many of them are racially based and how we need to go beyond them. To take one example that I love, If you take the 10 smallest states in the United States, they elect 20 senators, even though their combined total population is less than that of Los Angeles County, right? There's something wrong with that. And there's something that has a real impact on democracy. And I think more people are becoming increasingly aware of that. How we get beyond that is still very challenging. But I think people at least are understanding that these are the crucial issues one has to deal with. And I think that's the hopeful sign.